Hello there, John Cuturillo here, the counsellor of your listener. Thank you for joining us for this episode. As usual, thank you to everybody who makes my work possible. In today's episode, I'm going to be having a discussion with Derek Crager, the founder of Practical AI, and discussing his concepts around artificial intelligence and how they can be integrated into human endeavours without negating the need for human input. Before we begin, though, allow us to just remind our audience that anything you find on the internet or in the media is not advice. If you have concerns about yourself or somebody else of any nature for any reason, please consult with a professional or somebody else that you trust. If you are seeking counselling in Australia and would like to reach me, my contact details are in the description of this episode. Derek, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, John, the pleasure's mine. I've been looking forward to this for the last week. It's great to meet you face to face, finally, and I appreciate the invitation.
And likewise, Derek, tell us about Practical AI and the work that you've done over the years.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Practical AI, it's company name, and I'm very, I guess, pragmatic. I believe that words have value and meaning, and I think that this whole AI thing, it's a technology wave that just overwhelms a lot of us. And I think at the start of anything new, that's expected, typical change management type of thing. Practical AI, what we look at is what we call human first AI, meaning that we're building AI that thinks with the human, not for the human. So you've heard the human in the loop. I think you've mentioned it before in our talks. And the human in the loop is one thing, but that's kind of like a safety net. Let's let it automate on its own, and then if there's a hiccup, we'll jet in. I believe that practical AI, human first AI, is where we have AI work with the human to exploit what the humans already do better than anything else, and that's think outside the box and think conditionally.
Excellent. It's a fantastic concept, Derek. And today, that's what we're going to be discussing, how to manifest the idea of artificial intelligence working for and with humans, but not in a way that negates their actual input into the endeavors that we pursue as a society. Now, to provide a basis for this discussion, those who are familiar with my past work will know that I have expressed skepticism about artificial intelligence, in addition to many popular trends that have emerged over the years. And it's not out of cynicism or negativity for its own sake. As I discussed recently in an episode in which I interviewed Dr. Katrina Andrews, our minds, they don't operate in a vacuum. They operate based on the information they receive. They operate based on how we treat them. And how they process information and how competently they operate depends greatly on how we use them, just like any bodily system. If we don't use them as effectively as they can be, then we lose their effectiveness. And a particular concern that I expressed in that particular interview was that over time, if we demonstrate a certain ethos to ourselves, then we begin to embody that, and it begins to unintentionally or unconsciously influence our behaviors and influence the other domains in which our minds operate. And so in summary, if we allow a computer to do what we actually could be doing ourselves, and indeed are designed to do ourselves, then over time what's going to happen is we as individuals, and then as a society, as we begin to make that ethos more widespread and teach it to successive generations, our minds are going to adopt the ethos that it's okay, I don't need to know how to do this skill or that skill, I'll let it because there's always been a computer to do it for me. And if we don't use the cognitive resources that allow us to enact those tasks and those skills, we lose them. And what also tends to happen is we engage in a type of avoidance by which we actually redefine our quality parameters so that it seems to us as though we're still conducting our lives as effectively when in reality we're not. An example that I gave in that interview, it was a conceptual example, was that at a particular time, it may be considered a standard mark of skill that you can perform a particular task. But then if we learn over successive generations to allow artificial intelligence to do that task for us, then what sometimes happens is at an implicit level, we know that we're losing skill because we're not exercising them. But what we sometimes do to avoid the discomfort of knowing that we're allowing ourselves to waste away is we redefine the concepts so that they don't seem so bad. It would essentially mean to say, as an example, I'm not really losing skill. I'm just more advanced as a human and have learned to make a computer do it. Or I'm not really less advanced in skill. I'm just too busy doing other important things and the computer is just helping me. When in reality, it's just a way of avoiding the reality that we're losing skill. So those are the concerns that I've expressed in summary, but I'm very much interested to hear how you make this concept work, Derek, because you expressed explicitly that you'd like to make artificial intelligence work for humanity, not replace humanity. How does this look in practice? What does it look like to have artificial intelligence working for us without replacing us? How does that look in real life?
So first of all, AI, is it the savior? Is it the devil? Is it the all to end all, good or bad? Well, it's not any of those things. It's a tool. And there's a saying that goes way back, but it's if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, then every problem will look like a nail. And I say that right now, that's exactly where we're at. We have this thing called AI that says, hey, it can do everything, but we're polarized, right? We're really only, 3 years into this consumer market of understanding. The internet itself was an overwhelming wave of technology that came about. It was deployed in 1989 publicly to the consumer, but it really wasn't accepted worldwide until about 2006, or about 17 years later. Now, I think we've been enveloped in this AI wave in a quicker fashion, but we're still nowhere near 100% acceptance. And I like to explain that like a pendulum. A pendulum swinging one way is like I'm all in. But then once we get all in, we recognize the limitations and then it swings back to, well, I'm all out. But somewhere in the middle and just the working progress of moving forward and backward, this experience, we learn to identify what type of tool it is. If it's a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And what we're looking at on the corporate side is like, oh, we can save, FTEs, full-time employees, right? We can use AI to replace employees to do this menial task. Well, now there's layers to that philosophically. If it truly is a menial task, well, then let's get rid of it. Because, no longer do we have one farmer feeding two families for the world, right? It's one farmer per, 1,000 families or more. And that's through getting rid of the menial tasks through tools. So I think we should look at AI as a tool, but it's not the tool that's going to solve everything. It's a tool that can work with us, and it's really only good for whatever problems we design it to solve. Now, if we look back at the Industrial Revolution, there's a man named Henry Ford who he did not invent the automobile, but it's said that he's the father of the production line. And he had a saying that, hey, we will build our Model T or Model A in any color you want as long as it's black. So that's kind of like a storyline for AI here. AI can solve every problem in the world as long as it's only one problem. And it's defining that problem is really where we're at. So many businesses are saying, well, AI is the next thing. Let's have an answer, and now let's just try it to find a problem instead of the reverse. Psychologically, change management, business decisions, we should always start with the problem and work toward the Occam's razor. What's the obvious solution? So there's multiple layers in there, and as a society, these thoughts get dropped in like a pebble in the water, and they ripple out, and now we have ebb and flow and ripples overlapping, and all of us are in our different phasing of experiencing what AI is. So this is just the natural path of what change management is about. It's the human adoption, not necessarily the technical skills or the new technology that's there. It's that we just have to understand that we weren't handed a hammer, or maybe that's all we were handed is a hammer, and we have to figure out how to use it effectively, but not try to apply it to everything. We like to say in traditional vernacular here, use it or lose it. So if AI if it's thinking for us, which I disagree. I never want it to think for us. I believe that, and I have my retail product, my enterprise product is called Pocket Mentor. And we know that true mentors don't just provide answers. They provide as many questions to the protege as they do an answer, and they work with the human. So that's my basis. But if we focus on the use it or lose it standpoint, yeah, if we don't use it, we are going to lose it. But what are we going to lose? And is it something that we can do without? For some of us, that's a personal decision. For businesses, it's a business decision. For humanity, it's a human decision. And I have one example from my past. I've got a few years on you, John. I remember when the first part of technology came out that I remember. I think I was in 7th grade. And I had this watch. It was a Casio calculator watch. And for those that remember, that Casio calculator watch caused such a stir. It was actually as invasive for school use as today's talk or the last few years talk about using AI to write English papers, etc. It was like, hey, if we let students use a calculator, they're going to lose the ability to do basic math. But we learned something, and it took, over 2 decades, a full generation to learn that, yes, calculators to replace what we're doing, we need to have the basic understanding in our mind of how the process works. But what we found out, if we remove that cognitive load of figuring out back then the calculator watch was only addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So it was very basic to what calculators can do today. But what we found out is if we use a machine to propel us forward and get the mundane out of the way, that allows our human brains to learn something else. If we, and there's philosophy and psychology and science on this as well, but if we just look at memory blocks, our mind can only handle so many thought processes at a time. And as long as we are stuck on the very base, the empirical, addition, subtraction phase in our mindset, then that's going to keep us from focusing on how to apply our brain and our structure and everything we've learned to problems that are much bigger. Now, if we flash forward today and use that metaphor or replace that metaphor with AI, well, AI does allow us to do certain things. And I believe that the biggest and most prominent thing that AI does for us is to provide answers at the right time for the right person at the right place. So when I say have AI working with humans, this human first AI, we keep the human in the loop because the humans can think outside the box. By definition, AI cannot think outside the box because AI is a box, right? Humans designed it. And if we look at the ebb and flow of business when we do AI, yes, and without naming a specific employee base or role at a company, we could say that AI comes in and it replaces X number of humans, and it's great for business. ROI or return on investment soars, profits soar, income soars for the company. It looks great, but that's like for 2 or 3 years. When we turn everything over to AI, we are locking ourselves in to a technical iteration, meaning that, hey, everything that we're doing right now, we can continue to do this good for the next 3 years, but we're not going to get better. We won't get worse, but we won't get better. So now that business is going to suffer when other businesses coming in to serve the same consumer market or enterprise market, they will replace that previous company that leveraged AI for the immediate gain. So what we do when we say human first AI and having the AI think with the human instead of for the human, we keep the human not just in the loop, but we keep the human as part of the day-to-day asset. And so the human still leads the way. The human can make those decisions to think outside the box, can respond without being programmed for some new response. Because we know, we hear about AI and let's say a Tesla, car. Tesla's been around for decades now, which is wild, but we still talk about it like it's new technology. Anytime that Tesla learns something about their cars, what they do, they have to have a human observe it and then input it into the code and then propagate that code out to every machine that's out there and then hope that every machine accepts that version of the code without, the hardware differentials in that. We've had personal assistants for a while, and personal assistants have their limitations, whether it be a Siri or an Alexa or a Google or Gemini, we can talk to it. We know there's limitations there. Even with the AI personal assistants now, there's still some limitations. But when we train an LLM to work with a human in a specific role, and we box in the knowledge, it might be 100 times as much knowledge as that human could access on their own, but we use AI to grab that knowledge when it's needed and hand it to the human. Now the human can have this soundboarding, like, hey, what if we did this? And AI could say, well, you've done that before, or you've never done that before, but what would be the next step? And what are you missing? And it's a true soundboard back and forth rather than, let's say, whatever job role it is. Let's say it's a Saturday morning at 2 a.m. and a human's all on their own. They're making a decision. Maybe it's a Ford plant today. And they have to make a decision. A problem arose, and they either have to shut down the production line, which is, millions of dollars an hour, and go research the answer, and probably not get back up until Monday when the expert comes in, the engineer at the top level, to come in and fix it for them. So the human employee doesn't really learn. Now, if we have AI here to be a orchestrator or a conductor of knowledge, then the human, whatever role they're in, can ask AI just like they're asking their best engineer. And they can solve that problem. And if in this example of a Ford automotive production line, can keep that production line running without shutting down because they have access to the knowledge of their best engineer at all point in time. And that's really what we're looking at here, is access to the information is what makes AI so valuable. There's nothing in the world that AI can do that we can't. It just does it much, much faster. So when we keep the human in the conversation to think with the AI, we truly get the best of both worlds, John. We get the thinking outside of the box for the human, and we have AI as a safety net to make sure that all the minimums are followed, all the standards are followed, and everybody's following true industry best practice, rather than the human just saying, it's the best I can do. And also it's better than the AI saying, we're going to go this way. I don't care if it's right or wrong.
That's excellent insight, Derek. And you made a number of excellent points salient. First of all, tools are not inherently damaging to us. They do have much virtue in the progression of society. A salient example being the motor car. Since the invention of the motor car, we haven't lost our bodies, but what we have done is gained the ability to make journeys that would not have otherwise be possible for us physiologically in the time allowed without vehicular travel. But then what we did was, instead of allowing our bodies to waste, we found other ways to use our bodies so that our bodies could remain in good shape. Now, our overall physiology as a society, whether that's in given civilizations, whether that's in a good state or a bad state, is up for debate. I'd say we probably don't take care of our bodies as well as we should, but the invention of the motor car didn't have to cause that. We could still look after our bodies and live with the motor car. Same with even everyday examples such as washing machines. There was a time, I believe, when a washing machine didn't know when the correct volume of water had been filled into the tub. You had to watch it to ensure that the correct amount was in. You had to set the temperature yourself. Now the washing machine can calculate for itself how much water should be in the tub or in the cylinder. So now you can allow the washing machine to work on its own, and you can then go and do tasks that can't be done without your input and are much more complicated and pivotal in your life, leaving the menial tasks to be done by a machine. We wouldn't have lost anything by the invention of washing machines that use artificial intelligence. We would have gained something, though, time to pursue other endeavors that are far more pivotal to the human experience. So the invention of tools is extremely important, and the same with farming. We wouldn't be able to feed as many people as we do without farming advances. So those are excellent analogs. I'd like to obtain some insight into how practical AI looks in practice. What do your products look like as the users are actually engaging with them? And what sort of design choices have you made to ensure that that human element remains at the forefront of the usage?
Well, practical, pragmatic, simple. If we look at google.com, which has been the search leader for 20 years now, I guess, it's simple, right? Google is one of the biggest companies in the world, top five, top three, maybe. And their entire website, they don't have an about us. They don't have a leadership level. They don't have an FAQ. It's just a box. And you type something in it and you click the magnifying glass. It's so simplicity and access. We remove barriers when we make something that's simple to use. It doesn't have to be simple on the back end. It just needs to be simple for the user. And so our interface of practical AI, there's lots of bots and chat bots that everybody has access to, and we have access to it through ChatGPT and Claude and all the derivatives that are out there. I think right now at last count there's well over 1 million LLMs that are available if somebody wanted to dive down that rabbit hole. But in essence, it's the same way we access traditionally with text. Now, what we do at Practical AI, we add another layer, and that layer is voice interface. Because as soon as somebody has to put down their tools, and their tools could be in a white collar workplace where they're putting down whatever they're doing day to day, their office environment, or it could be a blue collar workplace where they're putting down literal tools, hammers, wrenches, meters, that sort of thing. Anytime a human has to go research, they are now multitasking. And we've said for 10 plus years that multitasking is bad. So I'm an employee, I'm working through something, I have a problem, I run into a glitch, I have to set everything down, I have to shift my mindset and go do research to find out how to resolve the problem that I have. And that gets in the way. So our interface, as simple as Google is with the box, you type and you hit the magnifying glass, our interface is voice. We also have text-based, but our priority interface is voice. Because what voice does, it leaves our hands free so we can still hold those tools, white collar office, blue collar, industrial skilled trades type of things. We can still utilize our hands. We can still utilize our eyes and gather information. And it works truly as a mentor. Again, our flagship product is called Pocket Mentor because we can pull a phone out of our pocket. And almost everybody in the world has mobile phones, and they can either tap a button that automatically connects them with their Pocket Mentor, or they can, in absence of internet, they don't even need internet. It's not a web app. They can actually dial a phone number just like if I was to dial your mobile number, and they could connect to the LLM that way. So it's another way where, as a society, we're already used to our headsets, our earbuds, every type of piece that we can put on our ears. That's become part of our clothing. And so if we just walk around and if we have a problem, we just hit that button. It's like an easy button. And we say, hey, I'm here doing this job and I'm missing something, or what are the parameters for this? Or maybe it's something as simple as, gosh, every year I got to change the toner. What's that toner cartridge number, And the information could be there rather than setting everything down, getting out of our loop and doing the research that takes 10 minutes, 100 minutes, a day, a week. We can just continue in the flow. So that's what practical AI does. We truly look at the practical side, and we want to make things as simple and as barrier-free as possible. What do they say when we're at either events or parties? If you could have dinner with anybody in the world throughout history, who would it be? And names come up like Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla and things like that. That's where we're at today. That's what AI can do for us and is doing for us, is we just tap a button, we talk to that expert, and we gain the knowledge in the moment without losing traction in what we're doing.
As a counsellor, I receive referrals from others, and I also like to help my audience become aware of resources and other providers which may be beneficial, as well as help other individuals and organisations gain exposure. That's why I host the Your Listener Partner Network, and I'd like to thank my partners for their support. I'd like to introduce Claire of Finding Solutions Counselling. Claire is a retired registered nurse and midwife holding a diploma in counselling and registered with the Australian Counselling Association. Married with 4 children and 3 grandchildren, she is constantly amazed at the ways that her clients manage to cope in difficult, daunting circumstances. Drawn to helping people all her life, she thoroughly enjoys using solution-focused brief therapy. This evidence-based modality aids in identifying clients' best hopes. Working in a co-constructive manner, she and her clients describe individual strengths, abilities, skills and traits, explore past positive experiences, or describe the client's hopes for the future to achieve their desired outcome. She presently specialises in helping women with grief and loss issues. Find Claire at www.findingsolutionscounselling.com.au. Excellent. So effectively, the system that you've created is adaptable to the industry of the users who are intending to use it, and it allows them to gain prompts and knowledge, basal knowledge, we could say, of the particular endeavors that they're pursuing, but still requiring them to know how to use the knowledge rather than the system itself in attempting to interpret that for them. They still have the responsibility of interpreting that knowledge and knowing how to use it, but it allows them to retrieve it in a way that would not be so feasible and would ultimately hold up their workspace and hold up their workflow if they were to try to do it themselves the manual way.
It does, John. And the neat side effect on this, I think it was the MIT report about 10 months ago that got headlines that emphasized that use it or lose it. You know, if we're using LLMs to create papers for school or to write reports for us, then we're not going to figure out how to do that. That's copy and paste text, right? And if I copy and paste something on my computer, I don't know what it is. So the side effect here with using this voice mentor, it's just like I called you and I'm asking you how to do something. You're giving me prescriptive advice that fits me and only me, and it's coming from you and only you. And just like you said, I have to think through it. I have to use that information. So in the end, it's not use it or lose it. It's we use the LLMs and it makes us smarter, more adept. It keeps that knowledge to the forefront of our brain. So the next time we come across an issue, we can handle it ourselves more often than not.
That is an absolutely critical point that you just made, that the artificial intelligence is actually facilitating learning experiences, just like we would develop knowledge through experience in our job since jobs have existed, just like we would develop knowledge while studying at school for various different qualifications. The artificial intelligence simply provides a convenient means of creating learning experiences, but once we have those learning experiences, we have actually advanced in some way, because it actually reduces the need for experience on that particular matter in the future, because once we've learned it, we can then do it ourselves. But then the AI is still there to provide us with further experiences when we need them.
Exactly. And for those that are in the knowledge, talent development, let's say corporate is what the HR calls it over here, talent development, but it's training. When we teach our people, there's a ratio that's been quoted a lot, at least in the last 30 years. It's the 70-20-10 learning principle. What it says is that humans learn 70% of what they know on the job. They learn 10% of what they know from sitting in class or going through an LMS, a learning management system, watching videos, whether it be in person or, virtual. They only have 10%. So, and then the 20%, they measured that people actually learn twice as much between classes talking with their peers than they do in actual class themselves. So what Pocket Mentor does and what Practical AI does and what Human First AI does, all these things that I champion, is that it's available while we're doing the work in the moment. So we are able to take that learning experience and truly put that 10x magnifier on it because it's available all day long, not just that 1 hour out of 10 and sitting in the classroom.
Another excellent point that you made, because I can certainly testify to the importance of on-the-job learning. We don't emphasize enough just how much you learn through actual experience. So allowing the learning experiences to then be integrated into the environments in which they tend to be facilitated most anyway means, as you say, it does magnify the effectiveness of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we just talk about apprenticeships, by design, an apprenticeship is learning on the job. 150 years ago and before, an apprentice would work with their mentor, their journeyman, for 20 years, 20 years before they were qualified to receive that journeyman status. And it was all through working on the job. Now, today, traditional trades apprenticeships are much shorter, but they're still 4 years, just like a university degree. And they emphasize the on-the-job training. And what happens, though, through the apprenticeship, the apprentice does not always have the journeyman available. A lot of times they're sent off to do menial tasks because the journeyman is doing the hard labor, the skilled labor. And so the apprentice learns through osmosis. And what we're doing here with introducing AI is now we have a true one-to-one ratio of protege to mentor, and that's available 24/7. And that's really the value there. It's democratizing knowledge and scaling it out so it is accessible to everybody all the time when they need it, not just when class is in session.
That's an excellent comparison to make. Imagine having to learn for 20 years before you're considered qualified. It would be inconceivable to most people nowadays. So tools have absolutely made life better for us. The potential to be better as a society is always there. But ultimately, it's up to us to make it work. We can't allow the technology to think for us.
That's true. That's true. And even when we do implement AI, there's a difference, a massive difference between you or I clicking on ChatGPT or Claude and saying, hey, how do I fix my furnace? There's information out there, but it's going to be generalized knowledge. So what the important part is when we move from the generalist to the specific subject matter expertise domain, that's the difference of just having an idea or talking in platitudes in a conversation versus let's take all the knowledge and test it, validate it, verify it, put it in a box, and then let's speak to that one knowledge domain at a time. That is 100 times more useful than just trying to guess. And that's what ChatGPT does. When the headlines talk about, hey, well, there's LLMs hallucinating again. Well, are they hallucinating? I always thought it was kind of a neat term. They kind of make up and go their own path. But we must understand that all the LLMs out there, the big massive ones that are public, they were trained on all the knowledge in the world. And just because there is knowledge doesn't make it fact. And if we look at perspectives, just because knowledge may work for person A doesn't mean it's going to work for person B. And for every question that's asked, there's at least 100 answers that are out there. And you can find this analog if you go to google.com and you type a question and you just keep hitting next page, next page, next page. One can validate for themselves that there's multitudes of answers. And if there's more than one answer for anything that we're doing, especially in a job role, especially when we're talking about having AI work with the human, it's validating that we need the right information at the right time, which means, yes, let's get it quick to that human, but let's also make sure it's validated. So the difference between consumer grade and enterprise grade AI slash LLM experience is that it's the data itself, it's that knowledge. We've already combed through and validated and verified that the knowledge we're working from is accurate.
Indeed, and one of the facts to which I'm constantly speaking in my work is that all too often, from an evolutionary standpoint, we try to give ourselves a reassurance that life is an orderly and safe place by trying to find simple answers to questions. And all too often, when you talk to people who have been weaned on popular thought rather than critical thinking, you pose a problem to them and they'll give you a platitude or a simple, what seems to be a relatively simple answer to the hypothetical problem. And the question I always have when I hear of this happening is, but do you know what those answers actually mean? Do you know the intention of the person who originally gave them? Do you know the context in which those answers were developed? Do you know the times at which those answers aren't so relevant? If you take a problem on face value or an idea on face value without understanding the context and the intricacies and the caveats, and then give a surface level response just based on the superficial factors that were presented to you, taking it literally, then that's not intelligence. That's more impulsivity, more a need for instant gratification rather than actual engagement. And so that's where the type of enterprise grade artificial intelligence that you've described would be so useful, because it's intended to be used and trained and integrated by somebody who has the knowledge already and is just allowing it to be dispensed with more efficiency. I do think back to, even though I wasn't there, the times in which people were expected to know more basic mathematics and execute it without the use of a calculator. Now, my parents talk to me often about how in their day, when you walked into a shop, the shopkeeper was often calculating how much change you were due when you gave them cash. Now, a lot of people don't know how to do that, or they don't. Not so much that they don't know how to, but they haven't developed the practice in order to be doing it efficiently. And you raise the point of when we started using calculators in education more often, people worried that we would lose something, and then we have to ask the question, what have we actually lost? And if we take away the cognitive load of having to do calculations manually, it allows our cognitive resources to be used on other problems. That issue requires further analysis because, yes, it does free our cognitive resources. Cognitive resources, to an extent, are limited. But I have to wonder whether the limitations are actually not as great as we think they are, because ultimately we as a society have never properly learned to harness our minds. I'll argue that throughout history, humans have never really known how powerful their minds are. And all the events of history, both especially the negative events, have demonstrated that humans are so subject to their own mental flaws and aren't aware of them that they allow those events to happen. Because if we chose to use what our capabilities were, we would have been able to prevent a lot of those events. Yes, the use of calculators and similar devices and technology has allowed us to be more efficient, but when we ask the question of what have we lost, we're not just literally asking what have we lost in the immediate use of a skill, but more what have we lost in terms of what that skill also facilitates. So, for example, I'm certainly not a neuropsychologist, so this is not my primary area of expertise, but from a layman's perspective, if you know how to conduct calculations quickly like they used to be able to, and you try to avoid the use of a calculator unless it is absolutely necessary, or just to check that your calculations are correct, for example, you're also strengthening cognitive resources that allow you to solve other types of problems. For example, it might also strengthen your musical skills, your ability to sight read if you're a musician. It might allow you to conduct other types of problem solving more quickly. Now, have we lost that ability? I wouldn't say the answer is immediately no, because if we don't know exactly what we had, then we may not know if we lost it. And I would argue that, again, if we don't fully know the extent of our mind, then we don't really know if we've lost a part of its capacity by adopting technology. A good example is my sense of direction was probably about average, but on purpose, I avoid using a voice prompting navigator in my car as much as possible, unless the route is so complicated and it's at such short notice that I don't have a choice. I try to plan my routes to new locations as much as possible because it teaches me to attune my mind to direction and to keep me practiced. If I was to continually, or if anyone was to continually rely on technology like a navigator, then there's a good chance that they may also be weakening their skills in navigation. Now, do you need those skills? You may go through your entire life never having to rely on anything other than a navigator. You may go through your entire life not having to rely on a paper map, in theory. But by strengthening certain skills, you can strengthen associated ones because they're associated with similar cognitive resources. And we just don't know what our futures hold. And it would be a terrible shame to get to the end of one's life and go, I now realize that I could have done so much more if I had have developed those skills. And it doesn't have to be for work. It can be for hobby. It can be for recreation. It can be for any number of things. Solving problems means taking every opportunity to ask, if this is part of the problem, can I do something to mitigate it? And when it comes to things like mathematics, I think it certainly doesn't hurt to know how to calculate in ways that you don't necessarily need to. Our cognitive resources, again, are actually quite flexible. Neuroplasticity is a real phenomenon. Our memory is, again, if we use the right strategies, we can actually expand it quite substantially. So I would say in areas in which we may not lose something, my question would also be, but are we losing anything by hanging on to it?
Well, I agree with you. If the use or lose it is a thing, and if we choose to lose something simply because it's going to save us time, now, I mean, we're humans, and it's been said a multitude of times that time is our most valuable resource. We cannot make more hours in a day. And for all those reasons, John, is why I champion human first AI, where we have AI that thinks with the human, not for the human. And as we discussed, just a few minutes ago, they can actually go through a multitude of iterations right there on the job and implement it, and they're thinking through this and they're learning new ways. And as soon as they identify a new way that maybe isn't written in that box that's guardrailed, well, now they can upgrade that box. So now everybody will have access to that information. And then they can also think in new ways. And with human first AI and products like Pocket Mentor available to us when we need it, now we can think through and learn about not just one topic in a day, but maybe 5 topics in a day or 10 topics in a day. We can shift gears. If we're on university campus and we want to learn philosophy, well, we got to grab our books, walk out our dorm, go across the campus and go to philosophy 101 class. And then we're going to sit there. We can only learn philosophy. But what if halfway through that class, we have this thought about chemistry? Oh my God, I just found out a new way to create the most environmentally friendly fuel. Well, no, you're stuck in philosophy right there until the end of class. And then if you want to go talk chemistry, well, now you have to wait till maybe the next day and sit into your chemistry class and talk with your professor, do some Q&A. So now you're at least a day behind. And what this human first AI and having that mentor in your pocket does, it allows our minds. And I fall within the neurodivergent category when it comes to mental acumen, autistic, ADHD, and dyslexic. So it's easy for me to not learn something because it's not available right there and then, or I get distracted by, ooh, shiny object, and I lose track if I have to shut down and go somewhere. It's kind of like losing one's mind, but my brain and many brains like that just shift gears. And AI allows us, especially when it's thinking with us, to shift gears at the same pace we do. It matches us. 100 years ago, we're sitting in a classroom. It's one size fits all. I'm going to teach you something. You're going to learn it this way. And my goodness, if you don't learn it this way, then you're not going to learn it. But today, through technology, we have the ability to have this one size fits one relationship that works on the fly. And to further that educational prospect or metaphor, or actually just real life here, we talk about the student to teacher ratio. And whatever culture we're in, we acknowledge that the closer to one that the student to teacher ratio is, the more that individual learns. And so if a teacher is teaching 20 classmates, Every hour is going to be divided into 20, and each classmate may only get 3 minutes with that teacher. But if the teacher to student ratio is 1 to 1, now we have that true mentor protege relationship. And now if we scale it out to 24/7, 365, that allows that individual to go down their rabbit hole, learn everything they want to know, take curiosity where it goes. And now they're going to learn so much more than they would just sitting in a classroom, waiting for their brain neurons to be tickled and inspired. They can actually inspire themselves. So for everything that you said, I think it should remain a choice whether we use it or lose it, whether we drive a car every day and we forget how to walk at some point, or we just cannot walk as far because we drive a car every day. With AI, as long as we stay thinking with the AI, then we can choose what we do, what we lose, what we choose not to lose, and actually keep those neurons running. We can use AI to think, keep track of 100 different things at once, and let our brain just focus on the 3 to 5 that was within our human capability. And as soon as we shift gears, AI is going to be right there to support us. And that's that safety net. And that's the value. And I truly believe that when we use AI in the right way, it will increase the development of our brains. It will increase our curiosity sense, and it will give us reason to be inspired. And I speak about on the job roles because, it's economics. Businesses want to implement AI to save money and to make more money type of thing. That's their game plan, and they should. But when we look at employees, and this is critical, every survey that I've seen in the last 30 years, the number one reason people work for a company is not money. Money is third or fourth on why they're working at that particular job. Number one or number two, regardless over the last 30 years, has been, I want to feel valued. I, as a human, want to produce something. So if you give me an AI that thinks with me, I'm still in control making the decisions, but it's going to make me a better doing whatever I'm doing. My God, now I can produce. Now I can feel good about myself. And you know what? If I'm a better human, I'll probably have higher income because of it. And so that's where I really see this human first AI as the win-win scenario, because humans got us here. We keep the humans and we keep them happy, and we get them to produce more than they ever were capable in the past, not because we're replacing them, but because we're amplifying what humans do. Then the businesses make more money, and they can hire more people and lower their prices and still make more money. And I just see this in this future vision in my head, that it's all integrated and it's all seamless. So for all those reasons, it's important that we work together throughout.
Well said, Derek. And an important message to take from what we've discussed is that it takes a nuance in mind to drive the progress. There's no rule book that states in this situation you can use AI, in that situation you shouldn't, or a blanket rule that says just use AI and everything will be fine. It takes a critical mind to be able to think, okay, in this situation, if I use AI, is it going to enhance it, or is it going to potentially detract from it? If it's going to enhance it, we use it. If not, we'll go back to the drawing board and find a solution that does enhance it. And having the human constantly do the thinking and then have the AI be the servant rather than the leader is so important. I have a parting thought for you, which is something that I also have discussed in the past. One of the key factors here has been allowing AI to adopt some of the thinking so that we can think about things that are more pivotal to the human experience. And because we have to think about multiple things at once, we need to limit how much we do so that we can think about all of them with sufficient quality. I can't help but wonder whether we do live in times of excess in which we're actually thinking about too much at once and think we have to. There are some analogues to it. My parents tell me about times in which, in Australia at least, when a company would make a large profit, they would announce to the media, we've made a large profit, and because of that, we're able to hire more people. Now it seems like often there are companies that make large profits and then say, and just to make sure that we retain as much of it as possible, we're going to dismiss people. We're going to make them redundant. we're living in excess in other types of ways. People are on multiple social media platforms constantly scrolling through their phone. They want more stimulation, more, 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 more. Is it actually enhancing their lives, though? Is knowing what your friend wore to the beach actually enhancing your life? Is knowing what somebody else thinks about a particular movie actually enhancing your life? We want more friends. We want more clothes. We want more possessions. Everything is more. And then it comes to the point of, I want to think about more. Therefore, I need to outsource some of my cognition. Now, I'm going to preface that a lot of that is down to economics. And especially nowadays, running a business is not easy, and business owners and their employees have to think about more because we've allowed the economy to develop in such a fashion that it favors excess. But to be perfectly frank, I'm going to posit that we think about too much, and it's not necessarily it's not a necessity in nature. It's a need that we've manufactured because our minds are constantly looking for the next most exciting phenomenon. I would actually argue we would probably be psychologically healthier if we thought about less and our economy and society was structured around things that were more humanistic. Our family, our friends, taking care of ourselves, actually working in a way that's ethical and contributes to society, not just working because you want to make more money and you want to get new gadgets or new things or look good. I think we would be more functional and actually happier as a society if we didn't constantly think more but thought less with quality.
I could not disagree with you, John. That's a great statement that you said, and I share it. Well, I will say that for everybody out there that thinks AI is a hammer, and you want some ideas on how else to use AI to benefit humanity, take a look. I'm giving away a first chapter of my book to your listeners. If you want to direct people to humanfirstai.net, we're really creating a network of what it means to have AI think with the human, not just for the human. So I believe if we all get to know that, we're all going to be have the knowledge to make the right decisions, whether we're employees, business owners, or CEOs. There's a manifesto there that can follow that can make sure that we're using AI in the right way.
Thank you, Derek, and links to your work will be in the description of this episode. To our audience and to Derek, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to be with you, Derek. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Now, remember, everybody, if you have concerns about yourself or somebody else, please seek the advice of a professional or somebody else that you trust. If you're seeking counselling in Australia, please find my contact details in the description of this episode. And to everyone, if you have feedback for us or you've been inspired by something that you've heard on the program, please feel free to contact us. We would love to hear from you, and we are always looking for new ideas. And I love to hear from people from different walks of life. I'm always looking for new guests to discuss concepts with me. I'm always looking for new perspectives and to be challenged and to analyze different ideas. So whoever you may be, please feel free to contact us. And until next time, take care.